Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach, always available too at carolthecoach.com.
Now I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I am married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need. All right. Hey, I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, and I am Carol the Coach. And I'm here with you every Monday night to talk about different aspects of sexual addiction. And let's face it, this is a tough situation, and I'm getting more and more and more calls and emails all across the world saying thank you for talking about this because nobody else is. And, it lends itself to so much shame. Now, we've done a couple of shows on how to deal with kids, and I really got into this field because of kids. I think if you've listened to previous shows, you know that I actually got a lot of referrals from schools when children were having oral sex on the bus, and they were videotaping and then texting it across the board. And that was so tough because, let's face it, kids don't know what they're doing. Oral sex in a lot of kids' minds is similar to kissing. And so they don't know the repercussions of their behavior. And then it's sensational to videotape it and send it to your buddy, who sends it to 10 of his buddies, who sends it to 14 of his friends, which are female. And, the whole thing can go viral. And I don't know that it destroys the lives of kids, but it certainly creates a situation where kids are forced to deal with things that they don't want to have to deal with. And so I am excited to be interviewing Kristen Jenson tonight. She, along with another co-author, Gail Poyner, wrote a book called Good Pictures Pad Pictues, Porn-Proofing Today's Young Kids. And it's it's a very well-done book to help parents prove their child's sexual integrity. Yeah, I know when you think about kids, you don't think about sexual integrity, but truly, by the time a child is 11, my stats say that a child will have seen 20 hours of pornography. Now, that's a lot of embedded images for a child to take in and to process. And so these women have made it their mission to help parents learn how to talk to their kids and to provide them with the tools to so-called porn-proof their kids' life. So I'm really excited about interviewing them, no doubt about it. And, you know, what I know to be true is that I've got people that are listening to the show that have accidentally exposed their kids to pornography. They've had things in their history. Cookies have popped up. Kids have seen things that they haven't seen. So we're also going to be talking about that. It's not just how do you help kids to deal with the images that their friends are sending. It may even be how do you help kids deal with a family systems problem that's occurred. So Kristen's going to be joining us about 9:15. And as usual, I interview the experts to help you to figure out how to handle these tough issues. Now, I received an email from somebody. I'll keep them anonymous, and it said, I'm becoming aware through my behaviors that I'm in trouble in areas of relationships and sexuality. My husband and I have been married for 30 years. We have a 24-year-old daughter, and we have a family band and play locally for many folks. These folks that we play for have become personal friends and admire us as a loving, happy Christian family. Only thing is, they don't know the ugliness and hypocrisy of our family life through the years and my resulting double life to escape from it. Because we are in a small area, there are no support groups that I can find that focus on love and sex addiction, and I don't know where to turn. I have shared much with one person who I consider to be my best friend. Only trouble is he's a man, and we fell in love 3 years now. We both caved and have become sexual in the summer of this year. Now, they tried to go back to the friendship, but it didn't work. And basically, this woman is saying, my husband has always invalidated my attempts to communicate my feelings and insecurities with him, and his emotional and verbal abuse has left him, in my mind, an unsafe person for me to be honest with. So she's saying, you know, this is a small town. We don't have resources or support. I want to stay true to my marriage and make decisions about my marriage, but I can't seem to do so because I don't have enough support. She says, I have lots of secrets, and I carry the guilt of being an unsafe person. Therefore, my friend, whom I love, and are going through the painful process of trying to stop contact and detach so I can face reality somehow. Boy, this feels like an unwanted divorce or death. I don't know where to turn, but I know I need support. Please help. So I sent her an email, and I said, you know, your situation is a tough one, but you can always attend telephone meetings for love and sex addiction by going to www.slaafws.org. No-meetings. And by going to these support groups, you can understand yourself better so you can break off this affair and reintegrate into your family. And then, of course, this woman needs to get some counseling, but she can't really get some counseling that's couples counseling until she breaks off the affair once and for all. Afraid they can't even be friends because you and I both know that it's kind of like saying, well, I'm going to keep cocaine at my house, but I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to keep it there because I'm not ready to let go and throw it away. Well, as long as she thinks she can be friends with this man, she will not be able to do the good work she needs to individually and as a couple. You know, I see a lot of marital couples, and one of my rules is, and I mean this, I won't see a couple if one of the people is still continuing to be in an affair. they won't ever do the work they really need to as long as they're hanging on to a relationship outside of the marriage. And so I know, we'll call this woman Barb. Barb, I know this is tough, but you need to break it off. You need to go to online meetings where you can call in and get the help you need. You need to get a sponsor. You need to work the 12 steps. You need to get a counselor to do your own individual work, and you need to be 100% rigorously honest, authentic, and transparent, because you obviously want to change, or you wouldn't have emailed me. I commend you for that. But don't kid yourself. You can't do this alone. Nobody can. So it's not about you. It's not about you being weak. It's that without the proper structure, nobody, and I mean nobody, can make the changes that they need to when it comes to a sex or love addiction. And that's what I have to say to Barbara. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that part of you that's listening to the show tonight are addicts. Part of you are partners of addicts. Part of you may be wondering, do I have a problem? And I got to tell you, the number one way to determine do you have a sexual addiction is if you can't stop. If you've tried to stop, you've stopped for a day, a week, a month, maybe even a year, and then you've gone back to the old behaviors, then you need to tell yourself, yes, my sexual addiction is compulsive, and I cannot lie, and I need ongoing help. And you've heard me talk about the 10 recovery tools and what you need to make your life different. And it is such hard work. You know, I was talking to a man tonight who he has stayed away from his bottom line behaviors and done a very good job. But I got to tell you, he is flirting with disaster. He's making phone calls. He's chatting. He's doing everything that he shouldn't do to keep his brain activated. And this is a disease of the brain. You know, this isn't just a problem with willpower. Don't fool yourself. It is not at all about willpower. It is about a neurochemical response to stimulation. It is about trauma reenactment that has occurred because you've been through something in your childhood. And if you're listening to the show right now and you're saying, hey, I came from a healthy family, I really didn't have any problems in my family. Well, I say get yourself to a CSAT and get that assessed. I've had men say that to me before, and then I found out they were tied to their bed for 4 and 5 years at a time when they were young because they were hyperactive. And you know what? That may not be abuse in terms of the intention was not to abuse. But, for instance, that person was seriously neglected. And although he believes his mother did the best she could and to protect and keep him safe, being tied to a bed so that you'll take naps and not leave the house leaves permanent scars. So that's why I say get yourself to somebody who can help assess that. Of course, I say a CSAT, that's a Certified Sexual Addictions Counselor. You can go to sexhelp.com to find out the closest CSAT in your area. The other thing I know to be true is that if you came from a good family and this behavior has become compulsive, it's not about judging or blaming anybody. It's about figuring out what you need to do to interrupt that and substitute with healthy behaviors. And you think you can do it by yourself, but I promise you can't. Because you need fellowship. You need other people coaching you, cheering you on. You need to do some hard work. I believe in the 12-step process, but I also believe in online, internet, recovery support groups like Recovery Nation. Certainly that can be very helpful. There is another tool called Smart Recovery. You can go to those meetings. They don't necessarily believe in a higher power, but they do believe that if you use all the tools that are cognitive tools, it's called CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy type tools, that you can, with the help of a support group and a mentor, make a difference in your life. So please don't do this by yourself. You know, your life depends on it. Your family's life depends on it. And you deserve the support. And that's why I recommend that you listen to the show, listen to the experts, find out what you can do to improve your life and the life of your family. So I'm so pleased to welcome Kristen Jenson to the show. As I said earlier, she helped to write a book that really makes a difference in how you talk to your kids about sexual integrity. So, Kristen, welcome to the show.
Hi, Carol. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here with you.
Well, yes, I'm part of a listserv, and there are 1,600 certified sexual addictions therapists, and the organization is run by a man by the name of Patrick Carnes. And his daughter, Stephanie Carnes, who now runs this organization, had thrown out your blog and said, this is some good information if you've got families, which we all do, that are dealing with kids who have been exposed to porn. And so I got on your blog and thought it was such good information, and I immediately sent out a request, hey, I would love to interview you for the show because this is a hard topic to talk about. So let me ask you for a second, what gave you the courage to want to write this book with, of course, Gail Poyner, and to make it a public issue? What gave you that courage?
That is a really good question, Carol. I really had never wanted to deal with this subject. It was kind of an icky subject. But I got a call one night from a friend, and she told me a really sad story about her 17-year-old son who had been, she found out later, addicted to pornography and had started acting out and perpetrating sexual abuse on his younger siblings. And so it was a big family, and he had gotten to all of the kids except the 2-year-old and the baby, and it was really traumatizing. And the next morning I woke up, and I just had this thought that just kept coming through my head, like, who will warn the young children? Because he had been a young boy when he had been sexualized, and there are so many young children that are starting to see pornography at a very young age due to all the mobile devices out there. So I looked for a resource for parents that they could use to explain, the dangers of pornography and how it affects the brain and some of the neuroscience behind addiction, and I just couldn't find anything. So I don't know, it was one of those things I felt compelled to do, and I gave up a job for it, and that's what I've been doing ever since. It took about 3 years to write the book, and now I just am trying to do my best to get this information out to parents so that they can help their kids be prepared to reject pornography and protect their brains, really.
Well, absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because as I was getting my training, one of the things we learned, and I said it earlier on the show, is that, being exposed to pornography or developing a sexual addiction, you said this 17-year-old boy was addicted. And, what I know to be true is that addiction takes some time to actually develop. But his behavior had become very, very compulsive, and he was more than likely reenacting the trauma that his brain had seen in so many videos onto somebody else. And, you know, that creates an intimacy issue. So then these younger kids don't know how to really be close with other people. So not only does it damage their brains, but it keeps them from forming healthy relationships.
Exactly. And that is such a travesty. That is probably the saddest part of the whole thing is we want our kids to be able to grow up and have healthy relationships and healthy marriages, and pornography is poisoning and is keeping kids from being able to do that as they grow older. So it's so important to help kids, and I'll tell you, my hat is off to parents today because it's a much tougher job than it was just 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, absolutely, and we're talking about her book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, Porn-Proofing Today's Young Kids. And it is a factual kind of read-aloud book for parents to read to their young kids ages 6 to 11. So, you know, I'm sure you get the question, well, is this book for kids or is it for parents? And you happen to believe both. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. We know a little bit about parents these days. They're busy. They've got so much going on. Many of them are working outside the home and coming home and trying to be the good parents and trying to help their kids be in all these activities, and it's overwhelming. I remember when my kids were little, I felt like I was living inside a tornado. So we wanted to be able to give parents a tool that they could just sit down and use right off the shelf, that they didn't have to do a lot of the translation work, because what we found is that even parents that know a lot about pornography and the problems with pornography and the brain addiction issues, they have a hard time translating that information to the level of a child. So what we've done is we put this together in a book that helps children understand this problem, and it's at their level. And we want, our goals for the book were to help parents initiate that conversation, open that dialogue, so that you bring the very dark danger of pornography into the light of day, and you let your kids know that you want them to come and talk with you and ask their questions, and that you'll be available to answer them. You want to position yourself as the expert on these topics, on sex and on pornography and all these things. You want your kids to trust you, and you want them to know and to be comfortable coming to you. So initiating that conversation is the very first thing, and then educating kids about addiction and about how pornography can trick the brain and can become a real addiction. And then thirdly, to empower kids with a specific plan, you know, like a stop, drop, and roll plan. We have those for fire drills and earthquakes and all kinds of other dangers. Kids need a stop, drop, and roll plan for pornography, and we call it the can-do plan. It helps them deal with the highly memorable and the often traumatizing, but at the same time tantalizing memories that exposure to pornography creates. So, you know, kids, it's not enough to just say, oh, it's dangerous, it's bad, stay away from it. No, we need to give kids a plan and a way to develop cognitive skills to defend themselves. Because, you know, I'm sure you know, Carol, when you see something, like when you see a pornographic image, whoa, it just sticks in your brain and it keeps popping back up, and these kids just don't know how to handle it. And then pretty soon, the more it pops back up in their mind, it gets them to go searching for it. So we want to teach them how to deal with those memories, how to deal with exposure, and to minimize it. So those goals of initiating a conversation, educating kids, and empowering them with a plan, those were the three things we really wanted to accomplish with this, with Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And by the over 140 now customer reviews on Amazon, I think we're really hitting the mark, because it does seem to be very comfortable for parents to just sit down and read this book to their kids. They're learning right alongside, but they can also take that information and they can expand upon it, because in the book we don't even mention the word sex. So you can read it. I've heard of many parents reading it to 4 and 5-year-olds. So you can read it to young children. They won't get everything, but they'll get quite a bit, because kids are actually smarter than we think they are. So that's what we've done with the book, and it really is a great tool for parents. They just pick it up, they read it to their kids, and then they can start that conversation, and they can have that vocabulary that they need to talk with their kids about this issue.
Well, can you give me an example of the Can Do It plan? Because obviously you empower kids with a specific Can Do plan. So give us some examples of that.
Okay. So the Can Do plan is CANDO. It's easy for kids to remember. You can actually have them think of it as a letter for every finger on their hand and learn it that way. So the first one is close your eyes. So when you see something, the longer you look at it, the more it's burned into your brain. So the first thing is to teach a child to just close their eyes and then turn off the device. The second thing is to alert a trusted adult. When you tell someone, it reduces the shame factor, and so you need to teach your kids to tell you. Most kids, at least from my experience and speaking with so many parents, kids are not coming and telling them until the parent says, hey, I want you to tell me if you ever see something like this. N stands for name it when you see it. When you put a label on something, it helps your thinking brain, that prefrontal cortex part of your brain, to come online, and it helps the child to reject pornography, to turn away from it if they label it. D, so that's can, and D stands for distract your thoughts. Again, we talk about helping kids to develop skills and cognitive skills to be able to turn away and reject pornography and deal with it. Distracting your thoughts is really an important skill. It sounds so simple, but we teach kids to, when those memories of pornography pop back up in your brain, redirect your thinking to something else that's exciting or something that is physical. So go do something physical, so that pretty soon, as you keep redirecting your brain to something else that's exciting or interesting to you, you are going to create a new neural pathway, basically. And that image will stop popping up so much. It will stop bothering you, and it will fade. And then O is order the thinking brain to be the boss. In the book, we talk a lot about the feeling brain and the thinking brain and how those two work together, and how addiction is really part of the feeling brain. And so the thinking brain needs to be the boss. And we teach kids to have this conversation. We teach them to say to themselves, when they see something, feeling brain, I know you're curious to see those bad pictures, but I'm going to keep my thinking brain in charge so I can avoid developing an addiction. And having this little conversation between your feeling brain and your thinking brain sounds so simple, but it's actually very powerful. And there are similar kinds of conversations that people that help with addiction recovery use the same kind of model to help addicts. So
that's what I
very
was just
powerful
thinking.
plan.
Yeah, this is exactly what we teach our addicts, only on a more adult level. But I really do believe in keeping it simple, so I love the fact that you've created this. And then I imagine you encourage parents to
and Carol,
of...
Can I just mention? Can I just mention that I have a wonderful little poster with these steps, and of course it does go along with the book. But the poster you can get if you subscribe to our blog at pornproofkids.org. And so if you subscribe, we'll send you a free PDF of that poster.
Wow. Okay, so for our listeners again, they go to what blog site? Go over that again.
Pornproof Kids. So it's pornproofkids.org or .com. We've got both of those URLs. Pornproof Kids, all one word. And I think you're going to link to it, too, on your site, or put up a link, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're on Facebook, fantastic. We're on Twitter.
And
I'm sorry, Carol, there's a little bit of a delay. Yeah.
No problem. Who's helping you with all this? I mean, obviously Gail helped you to write the book, but are you doing this all by yourself?
She's our resident expert. Well, I have a few people that help me, but a good friend that was my writing coach, she's helping me, and so I get volunteers from now and again, but it is kind of a one-man show at times. So, but it's pretty much my blog. I blog every week, and I get Gail and Claudine and a few other people to do guest blogs, and just a lot of really good information to help parents stay aware of the issues and help them to have tools to fight it. So, for example, I have a whole series of articles, a six-article series on what you do after you find out if your children have been looking at porn. You know, how do you respond? What do you do? And so we have several articles on that, and it's a SMART plan that we have. I love acronyms. So we've got the can-do plan, we've got the SMART plan, and they can just go onto my blog and search, put in SMART in the search category, and they'll pull those up. Lots of really great information.
All right, but you have teased us, so just give us a flavor for what do you do when you realize your child has been exposed?
Well, the first thing on that SMART plan is to stay calm. So lots of parents, when they find something, maybe they find something on a search history or an iPad or whatever, and they realize, or maybe they hear it from someone else, they find out, that's going to be a very emotional reaction. So the very first thing is to stay calm. Because if your child has been looking at porn or has seen it, you're not going to really help the situation by having an emotional reaction. In fact, that's going to drive the child to hide it. So stay calm. And the next thing is make a plan. Take time. So when I've had people call and say, "Oh my gosh, I found this on my son's iPad," I say, give yourself 24, 48 hours to talk to your spouse, talk to a friend or a family member, a trusted family member, and formulate a plan. And then A stands for assist your kids to understand their confused feelings. Kids when they see pornography, they may feel disgusted and horrified, but at the same time, they may also feel a sexual response, or they may also feel intrigued or excited. So I give some information on helping kids understand that. And then R stands for, regular talks. You never want to just give one porn talk. You want to do it regularly. And just make this a part of your conversation. porn is not going away anytime soon, and it's something your kids have to deal with all the time, and they will throughout their lives. So make it a regular checking in and a regular part of your parenting conversations. And then T is train the entire family. Help them to, as far as filters, putting filters on, train them about why you're doing that. Talk to them about family rules and family standards. And so you want to bring the whole family in on this. So we're all working together to keep ourselves healthy.
That makes absolute sense. But let me ask you something, because I know that you would not be a proponent of one type of filter, but do you find that there are some filters that are really family friendly?
Well, there's a couple kinds of filters, and I do have a few articles on my blog. I tend to be, technology changed so quickly. I believe that in order to prevent kids from getting addicted, you have to persuade them. And most kids are pretty smart, and they can get around filters if they want to. They can find this. They go to the most libraries. They can find it if they want it. So filters will help block a child that, wants to, that doesn't want to be looking, that doesn't want to look for this stuff. So it is helpful. So there are a couple different kinds of filters. One is, just a pure filter where you set the levels, and there are many companies out there that do this. And again, you can look on my blog for some ideas. If you just type in filter, I have a couple of blog posts about it. There's filters that you can do on your devices, and there's also filters at the level of the router, your Wi-Fi router in your home, that will block it at that level. So any device that comes into your home, whether it's a friend, a family member, comes in with their smartphone, and they are depending on the Wi-Fi, it will block that. Now, it's not going to block 3G and 4G and that kind of thing, right? So that's the problem with the mobile devices. So filters are great to have, and I think and passwords, I think every family should do that, but they should really do that as a part of the plan that they get their kids on board with the plan. Like, hey, we're going to filter this stuff out because we don't want this garbage coming into our home, and we're doing it not only for you kids, but for us too. We don't want to see it either. So that's my idea about filters. We need to help kids develop their own internal filter. That is going to be really the key thing in keeping kids safe in this digital age, is helping them to develop and be motivated and want to and know how to develop an internal filter.
Well, and I 100% agree with you. And, we had the people from Covenant Eyes on, because that's a filter system that the accountability report obviously goes to a parent in the family so that they can kind of review. Whereas K9 is another filter situation that comes on a lot of phones and provides free filtering. What families really need to decide is, obviously at 6 years old, a child is probably not going to necessarily know how to get beyond the filter. But truly, kids are getting so sophisticated these days that,
they are.
If they're not buying into it, they're going to get around it.
I recently heard of, I read a blog post of a woman who, she was just feeling so great because they had everything locked down. They had locked out YouTube. They had, and she sent her son to bed with his iPod Touch, thinking that everything was going to be okay because she had locked everything down and everything was fine. But that little 7-year-old, he found a way around it. And he was shaking because he had been looking at porn videos. So I think you're right. For the little ones, it is great to have a filter, but as they get older and as Covenant Eyes, that's their philosophy, and that is to provide, accountability. So it's not like a fence that you're putting up that they're going to want to try to, climb over, but it's helping them develop responsibility as they mature.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think those are all great ideas.
I've got another question, because for a lot of parents, they're so uncomfortable talking about sex. And, you said that even in your book, you can do a lot of talking and not even mention the word sex. So if you want to continue an open-ended dialogue, not just wait for the crisis, but continue to talk to kids, what topics do you think help children to open up to their parents?
So what topics around sex?
Well, yeah, because
or
you said,
what topics?
Well, or around pornography, or around exposure to sexual activity.
Well, obviously there's a lot of triggers in the environment. There's a lot of opportunities in the environment. You just go to a grocery store and you're going to see certain magazines, sexualized images, and you can begin to talk to children about those issues. I think that I believe that you should be talking to children about sex and teaching them about sex in a layered approach from the time they're very young. And one of the things I always recommend is that parents use the proper body part names, so there's no shame in identifying all the body parts, and no body parts are more shameful than any other body part. And so that's one thing. And to just teach kids that if you have a question about, for example, what a word means, lots of times kids will hear a word at school and they won't know what it means. So they'll come home, and the first chance they get, they'll go online and they'll look it up, which is really the wrong idea. We don't want them looking up these sexualized terms because they're going to run smack dab into pornography. So to teach your children, hey, if you hear a word at school, come ask me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer, because going online is dangerous to do that. There's more lies online about sex than there are truths. And just tell your child that I will tell you the truth. And what you can find online is often not the truth about sex, about pornography. So I always say, be your child's expert on sex.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And the other thing, and I don't know if you heard me saying this earlier in the show, unfortunately, again, I deal with addicts who are in recovery and wanting that so badly in their life. And one of the casualties is that their children may have been exposed to their pornography because they didn't clear the web browser history, or, well, just in there's a variety of reasons. Kids are so smart that, they get curious. It's kind of like, and I don't know if you ever did this as a kid, but so many children talk about the fact that, they love kind of snooping in mom and dad's drawers and in mom and dad's wallets and purses. And it's the same thing with the computer. They enjoy snooping a little bit. It's kind of a way that they figure out who their parents are. Now,
right.
What
kids are so
tell?
Curious. They're hardwired.
Oh, they are hardwired. Absolutely. So you can imagine that a lot of the addicts that I've worked with feel great shame because they know that they've exposed their own child to these images and of course, in their addiction. What would you tell a parent that actually contributed to that kind of situation?
Well, that does happen. In fact, I spoke to an addiction counselor that specializes in pornography addiction, and I wrote a blog post about that entitled How Dads Can Protect Their Kids Online. And I wrote this for Father's Day. And he said, this is Jeffrey Ford that I was talking with, he said that the child that lives in a household where there's a porn addiction, a parent that has a porn addiction is much more likely to have porn, to get into pornography themselves, just like you were saying. But what he says is that fathers and, both parents can have a huge impact on their kids' attitudes. And I think the main thing that he says is that you have to be open with your child about your addiction, and you have to tell them that you are working on it and show them that you are working on it. I think those were the two of the pieces of advice that he gave, is to just the best gift that they can give their kids is to start working on their own recovery, and also to tell their kids. Because lots of kids will come into him and they'll say, I've seen this on my, I know my dad looks at porn. And they keep this secret. It's such a shameful thing to them. And they keep this secret, and it really bothers them. But sometimes it also drives them to do the same thing. We often go in the same direction that we see our parents going into. We're imitative. Children are very imitative of the adults that are around them, and they're wired to be imitative. So it's not unusual that if a parent has a problem like this, that a kid may get into the same issues. So again, for parents struggling with porn addiction, I would say make sure you're working those 12 steps, right? Getting the help that you need, and let your children know that yes, you struggle, and you don't want them to have the heartbreak that you've had. I just published another post where I interviewed a father who had been looking at porn since he was 10 years old, and the advice that he would give if he could go back in time, to himself at 10. And again, so be open with your kids and just get in and start working on it and start doing that important addiction recovery work, because in the end, that's going to really strengthen them. That's going to give them such a powerful example of overcoming something so difficult. It can't help but help them, I think.
Well, absolutely. And, here's what I really like about your presentation. You are all about kids need to be warned about the dangers of pornography, and yet you're saying if you're a parent and your child has been exposed to your pornography, be honest and talk about the work you're doing that to be healthy and to make better choices. Mm-hmm. And then I love the fact that you said to parents, if you find out that your kids have seen some pornography, have brought some pornography home, maybe even be distributing some pornography, stay calm. What we don't want to do is to shame them either A, into submission, or shame them into secrecy, because that is not going to get anybody anywhere.
Right. You have to look at the long term, what's really happening here. Kids are so curious, and they don't see the long-term effects. They don't see that this can be a slippery slope. They never really think that they're going to have a problem, right? I can stop any time, but then they find they can't. And what you want to say is, hey, we are on the same side. I'm going to help you. We're going to do this together. And again, we just need to persuade them. And so I talk a lot about prevention because And it's not prevention in the sense that we're going to prevent our kids from ever seeing it. No, we're not. But prevention in the sense of hopefully preventing them from becoming so involved that they're addicted or that their attitudes are so warped about sex and about relationships that they are impacted and they're not able to have healthy, intimate relationships when they get older. So those two are so critical that we help kids with this prevention piece, because to me it's kind of like a pandemic. When there's this pandemic flu or with Ebola, everyone's rushing to say, hey, we need to get a vaccination for this. And it wasn't that long ago, and Carol, it was in our lifetime when the last case of smallpox was recorded. And so we have obliterated smallpox from this planet. And we did it because it was killing millions and millions of people. And in fact, there are historians that find that or that believe that smallpox killed more soldiers than combat, because it would rage through these camps where the soldiers were. So we eradicated smallpox, not by treating everybody that got it, but by inoculating, by vaccinating young children and people before they were exposed. So my whole message and mission really is to help parents feel more comfortable, to give parents the tools and the information so that they can basically porn-proof their kids, so that when their kids see it, they've been kind of vaccinated. And, of course, it's not as easy as just a one-time vaccination, but they've been given the information and tools, and there's an ongoing conversation so that kids stand a chance to reject pornography and to say, this is not healthy, this is not going to help me be happy, I'm going to stay away from it.
Well, and of course, you encourage parents to talk to their kids as soon as they are dealing with the Internet, as soon as they're working with the very vehicle that can bring it into their life, they need to start talking to them about it. Now, because of the rise of Internet-enabled mobile devices, you know and I know that a child is at much greater risk. And you and I both had the same figures, which is that by the time a child is 11, he or she, but mostly he, will have viewed 20 hours of porn. Where did you get your stats?
It's sad. Well, that's a good question. Statistics on this are kind of hard to come by, or you see them and then you try to find the actual study. And what I found is a lot of studies have these statistics, but they were all done before 2007 when the iPhone came out. And when the iPhone came out in 2007, it just changed the world. And in fact, I read somewhere that when historians look back on this century, they will say that the advent of the iPhone was one of the biggest changes in our culture. So there's a lot of we're a little short, I think, on really good statistics, recent statistics that say exactly. But let me tell you, when I talk to parents and I go and speak a lot, and I read about this a lot, there's so much, there's so many stories of young kids seeing pornography on the school bus. Someone wrote in and told me about a 5-year-old that was shown hardcore pornography on a school bus by a 3rd grader. I know of an 8-year-old that got into pornography. This is a couple years ago when she got an iPod Touch with an internet connection. So young kids, I think, but it's hard to study these things. It's very difficult. What are you going to do? Go into an elementary school and ask all the kids? You'd have to get a lot of parent permission. It's very difficult to study this with kids. There's some ethical and moral considerations. So I think a lot of it is just common sense that we know kids are getting exposed. There are studies that do show, studies out of the University of New Hampshire, studies that they're out there, and I blog and I often cite them on my blog, but there's not enough research, and it is difficult to do this research.
Oh,
but
100%.
It's common sense,
Well, and unfortunately, I work with so many addicts that they're able to identify after the fact, after it's really been a big problem. Oh, I was first exposed to pornography at age 7, or I was first exposed at age 11. And of course, most of the addicts that I talk to, we're talking magazines and videos. But certainly many of the 20 and 30-year-olds did get their first exposure through the Internet because they're right at that age where the Internet really was pretty popular starting in about 1998. So
Yep.
I can really appreciate the fact that you're right. It's very hard to get current data because, because of a lot of things, but certainly it's not something that we can address in the schools or even at home, actually.
Yeah. Right. I've talked to Dr. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I talked to Dr. Poyner about, how could we do some research on this, and how can we, and I've talked to other people, how could we do some research on this with kids, and I always come up against, that's hard, there's an ethical consideration of, and it's very difficult to establish causality between, when kids look at this, and it's difficult to do, but if you talk to enough parents, you're going to see that the kids are getting exposed to this just in huge numbers. And so many of the parents that have read my book to their kids, many times their kids will say, yeah, I have seen it, but they never told their parents.
Absolutely.
So,
well, you have been
it
so
is
helpful tonight. Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to add in the last 60 minutes of the show?
Well, I would just say that it's important for parents to realize that a child's brain is very different than an adult brain. And a child's brain, because of its structure and the fact that it has an abundance of what we call mirror neurons, makes a child's brain more vulnerable to pornography than an adult's brain. Children are more impacted by what they see than an adult. And so I find that parents routinely underestimate not only the accessibility of porn. For example, any child that can get onto Twitter can just do #porn, and they will come up with all the porn that they could ever want. Free porn streaming constantly.
Absolutely.
So the accessibility to porn, how affordable it is, so much of it is free. And so I think that parents sometimes underestimate that, and we need to just know that this is a problem, but we don't need to be afraid. We need to just calmly take steps to educate and empower our children so that they have power over pornography,
and I am going
instead of pornography having power over them.
Thank you, Kristen, so much for educating my listeners, and I look forward to more books, more blogs, and you're right. They have access to a lot of information on your site. So one more time, your blog is?
pornproofkids.com.
All right. Thanks so much, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Carol. Bye-bye.
All right, you take care. All right, guys, we had a great show for you tonight, and we'll see you next week, same time. And as I say at the end of each show, fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. We'll talk next week.